Continuing example 2C, our second requirement is to calculate the company's break-even point in units sold. Now there are a few ways we can go about doing this. If you remember from the formula that was given, sort of the simplest and most straightforward way to figure out break-even is we can simply take the company's fixed costs per period, which in this case is per year, the $900,000, and we can divide that by the CM per unit, which is $120 per unit. And then if we simply do that, $900,000 divided by $120 per unit, and our break-even point is 7,500 units. Now that's fine, that's sufficient, that gets us an answer. But it doesn't really explain why, nor does it really give us a whole lot of help in understanding how that makes sense in the context of the entire company. So one thing that I would like to do is kind of give you another couple ways to think about how we can do break even and make sense of it. If you recall, our number of units in these second and third rows are keyed to the number of units up here. So we've got 8,500 typed in up here, and then the two other ones, variable cost and contribution margin, both refer back to that 8,500. So one thing we can do is if we set this number of units here equal to the break-even, we'll see our entire income statement at break-even, and it'll kind of prove to us that this is correct, and it'll help us understand the relationship. So we can set our number of units equal to our fixed cost per period divided by the contribution margin per unit, which is the same thing we did up here, except instead of doing it in a separate analysis, we're now doing it in the context of our income statement. And if we set our number of units equal to that division problem, 7,500 units, we can see that our revenue is adjusted, our variable costs are adjusted, and our contribution margin is adjusted. And our contribution margin is equal to our fixed cost, which is what has to be the case to get our net operating income equal to 0. So that is another way that we can figure out our break-even point in terms of number of units. So, and there's also a third way we can do it. Let's reset this back to our original. If you're comfortable with Excel's solver function, we can use a solver function like so. Tools, solver. And what we're looking to do is we're trying to set an objective, which in this case is going to be cell D27, to a value of 0, and I've already got it set there, by changing variable cells. And here's the variable cell we're going to change. We're going to change the number of units, C23. So we're going to change this cell in order to get D27 to a value of 0. We don't need any other particular constraints, so we'll just go ahead and hit solve, and Excel will do its work and come up with a number of 7,500. So if for whatever reason you're more comfortable using solver than using Excel to do the algebra, you can do it that way. So those are three ways we can come up with the break-even point of 7,500 units sold. So that's requirement 2, break-even point in units sold. And one final way we can use our contribution margin format income statement to come up with break-even point in number of units sold. We can sort of, in a sense, work backwards. We can clear out this data and we can say sort of what must be true and sort of work our way up the income statement from the bottom. Break-even point means that net operating income is 0. If net operating income is 0, and we know that our fixed costs are $900,000, then we know that it must be true that contribution margin is going to be the sum of those two. Contribution minus fixed cost is net operating income, so therefore net operating income plus fixed cost will get you back up to contribution margin. And now we know that contribution margin's got to be 900,000, and we know that contribution per unit is $120. And so there we can set our number of units of contribution margin equal to contribution margin divided by contribution per unit, and we get 7,500. And then we can just fill in our number of units being equal to that. So we're kind of working our income statement backwards. This sort of fits the logical progression of what happens to get to net operating income of 0. That's a given, and sort of work back up to number of units. And so we're doing it sort of in a backwards order. Logically, it makes sense. Depending on how you have your spreadsheet set up, it might not be the most logical way to use a spreadsheet. If you happen to be doing it without a spreadsheet, and you're doing it by hand, I think that's probably the clearest way to do it, is to start with the givens, which would be your per unit items, your fixed cost, and the income that you're solving for, and then work your way back up there. So that is yet one more way to calculate break-even point in number of units. So that is requirement 2.